Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Arbonne Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 204. And inshallah, we're going to carry on with the 9th year of the Hijri. And just a very quick recap what we did last week. We obviously the sessions we've done before talked about the Battle of Tabuk and Attab ibn Malik and the lessons in Surah Taubah. Last week we did, once the Prophet ﷺ returned from Tabuk, there were a few other little incidents that we mentioned. One was around, there was an allegation of infidelity between a husband and wife, and then there was the issue around 4 testimonies taking place, and the 5th being an oath invoking Allah's curse if they are lying. We talked about the well-known story of the lady who confessed to committing adultery, and she'd had a baby, and then she was told to go, or she was pregnant, and then she was told by the Prophet to go away and come back once the baby is born. That's what she did, and then the Prophet sent her away again to say basically, come back once the baby is feeding themselves, is weaned, and which is what she did, and then the hudud was enacted on the lady. And the main part of the session last week, we talked about the death of Abdullah ibn Ubay al-Salul, who was the leader of the hypocrites and who was a tribal chief and was one of the main opponents of the Prophet whilst he was in Medina, because he thought that he should be the rightful leader of the people of Medina, and he was de facto going to be crowned king at the time when the Prophet came and took power in Medina, which we talked a long time ago following the Hijrah, because he'd already had the oath of the pledge of war, and the Nuqaba were stationed outside Medina as he walked in and took charge. So he had this deep-seated hatred of the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims purely from a political point of view, but also his prestige, his pride was also damaged, and he was obviously a pagan. He was forced to believe in Islam against his will, so he kept his allegiances to the Quraysh, to the Jews around Medina, and he worked tirelessly to undermine Muslims. But he passed away, and the Prophet ﷺ was called to his deathbed, and then Umar ibn al-Khattab asked the Prophet ﷺ, why are you going? And then why did the Prophet ﷺ perform the janazah on him? So that's some of the things that we talked about last time. And the main thing just to talk about today is the fact that the Prophet sent Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to do the Hajj. And the other thing to mention, which we'll come back on to inshallah next week and the following weeks, is that this is known as the year of the delegations. So even as we are speaking, there have been delegations coming to Medina of people who are professing Islam. They want to become Muslim, people who are just wanting to know more answers, and people wanting to negotiate their current situation and status and stay as they are, pagans or non-Muslims, within the Arabian Peninsula, and they want to sort of negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ. So lots of delegations are coming, and in fact, it's fair to say that lots of delegations have been coming for a number of months, if not a year or two, prior to the 9th year. But obviously, the main event that catalyzed the other tribes was the conquest of Mecca. And now you get a whole, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised in Surah Al-Nasr, you'll get the swathes of people coming and entering into Islam. But we'll start that maybe later today, if not next week, inshallah, next time. So we mentioned that Abu Bakr was principally sent, and Ali came after him, and there were four main conditions, which we'll just explain later on, but I'll just sort of foreshadow it. One is that no one will enter Jannah, paradise, other than a Muslim. No one should perform Tawaf naked during the Hajj, or at any other time really, but it was a practice that was done during the Hajj. No polytheist, idol worshipper, shall ever perform Tawaf after this year. And any contracts or treaties that exist between the Muslims and the pagans shall expire after 4 months, unless there's already another preset time clause in there. So previously we've mentioned how the conquest of Mecca occurred in the 8th year of the Hijrah, and it was during the month of Ramadhan of the 8th year. So we talked about how the Prophet went there and spent a lot of time, and it was during the month of Ramadan. And then after that there was the battle of Hunain, and then obviously we've got Tabuk after that. But that so during the 8th year, the Prophet, although he had political and military control over Mecca, it still was not fully safe. There were still other big tribes, the Christians of Najran and other tribes of Najran, Thaqif, people of Taif, and obviously we talked about Tabuk, who were interested or who may take advantage of the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was going for Hajj. They may take advantage of that situation and decide to attack Medina, because it would have been a public knowledge, or in fact even attack Mecca or the Prophet ﷺ during this time. So there was no guarantee that the Prophet would be able to do that. So there was no formal Hajj during the 8th year, although I think the books of Seerah mention a few people did go and do it, but the security situation was such that it wasn't really feasible. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he left after the conquest of Mecca, we mentioned that he put in charge as a governor somebody called Attab ibn Asad, who was from Banu Abd Shams. And he was the governor of Mecca, but he was a new convert to Islam. He was one of those who were in the conquest of Mecca and became a Muslim there. So he was chosen to be the governor, and there were advisors that were left to advise him, but who would not stay behind, because one of the reasons that the scholars say is that it was still obligatory on all the muhajirin, all the people who emigrated from Mecca, to stay in Medina. So they wouldn't have been allowed to set up home in Mecca. In addition, those people would have preferred to stay in Medina than in Mecca, because that's where the Prophet ﷺ is, and so. It's as I say, it was still the law around doing hijrah to Medina. Some scholars say was still active, but the Muhajirin, they would have preferred to be in Medina rather than Mecca, and so there was no specific permission given to the people to return back to Mecca. And essentially, the part of being a muhajir is that you've given up everything and gone to Mecca. So you've given up your previous life, you've given up all your previous possessions in Mecca, and you've now made Medina your home. And so there was Attab ibn Asad, who was made as the governor, and it's recorded that a handful of people did go from Medina in the 8th year to perform Hajj, according to the previous customs of that they used to do, the customs that they thought Ibrahim had laid down. So that was their understanding. Again, also we know that at that time that the people, the mushriks, the idol worshippers, some of them, if not quite a few of them, actually used to perform Tawaf, going around the Kaaba, the circumambulation. They used to do that naked, right? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he stated himself, and this was his stated reason for not doing Hajj during the season of Hajj in the 9th year. In the 9th year, was that he said to Abu Bakr, verily the pagans perform Tawaf naked around the Kaaba, and I do not wish to perform the Hajj until that practice is eliminated. And so he gave this reason. Obviously Allah took that into account, and then we got the revelations of Surah Taubah regarding that. And just a quick, we mentioned before how the pagan worshippers, the polytheists, the idol worshippers, they used to, some of them used to do a tawaf naked, and there are various explanations for that. Some of them used to even justify it according to it being sort of getting closer to God, because for them this is how Allah created them, and this is them being sort of going back to the natural state. But Allah addresses this in the Qur'an, where He talks about this lewd, perverse behavior, essentially, in the Qur'an, in Surah 7, chapter 7, Surah in ayahs 26 to 28. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in translation, O children of Adam, we have bestowed upon you clothing to conceal your private parts as an adornment, but the clothing of righteousness, that is the best. That is from the signs of Allah, and perhaps they will remember. 27, O children of Adam, let not Satan tempt you as he removed your parents from paradise, stripping them of their clothing to show them their private parts. Indeed, he sees you, he and his tribe, from where you do not see them. Indeed, we have made the devils allies to those who do not believe. And 28, when they commit an immorality, they say, we found our fathers doing this, and this is what Allah ordered us to do. Say to them, indeed, Allah does not order immorality, right? Fahsha or fahisha. Do you say about Allah that which you do not know? So here Allah is explicitly criticizing this justification that the Quraysh had and the pagans had for doing tawaf naked. He's saying, look, this is a lewd behavior. This is very perversive. This is a fahsha. Fahisha. We should, this, you cannot ever consider this to be something which Allah would sanction. So He's given you clothing to cover yourselves and act as an adornment. So here Allah is addressing that one concept. And then again, the justification that they give is that they should do tawaf in the way that their mothers gave birth to them, right? But Allah saying, look, no, that's not right. You should. He sent clothes down for us to wear. And then the other, again, it's a very twisted logic, but you can understand some of the logic behind it. Is some of them would say, how can we do tawaf in the very same clothes that we disobey Allah in? And it's a shame on the individual to be wearing the same clothes that they've disobeyed Allah with. So how can they do tawaf in those sort of tainted and corrupted clothes? So there were two options for them. One option was that they would either take off those clothes and do it naked, or that they would then have to buy pure or purified or holy clothes from the people in Mecca. And obviously they would buy it from the Quraysh, the merchants there, or borrow it from the Quraysh. They'd borrow garments that they would see as being pure, and that would justify doing the Tawaf. So they're saying, look, we can't, how can we wear the clothes that we do normal sins in, because Hajj is such an act of a high act of religiousness. They need to be pure for that. So you can either be pure by being naked, or you can be pure by buying holy clothes from the Quraysh, because they are the custodians of the Kaaba. So this was the mentality, and this had been going on for decades and centuries, that type of attitude. And obviously, even the Prophet ﷺ, he's growing up, he's seeing people do Tawaf like this, and it's not just the men who would do it naked. It would be the women as well who would do it naked. And for them, the women used to think that if they are naked, if they say a special chant, it essentially, what doesn't make them invisible, it makes their nakedness invisible to other people. So by doing this chant to say, today my body is apparent, but whatever is apparent, I don't allow anyone to stare at it. It basically means that anyone who looks at them, they become covered up. So again, it's a very weird, nonsensical attitude that they had, but they genuinely believe this. This is how they had been doing things for generations. So this was a custom. This is how they thought they were supposed to do the Hajj. So Prophet ﷺ, it gets to the ninth year. He's got political control over Mecca. He's got his governor in there. They've been learning about Islam for over a year now, and then he sends Abu Bakr with about 300 other people and 20-30 sacrificial animals to do the Hajj, because the Hajj needs to happen. So he sends Abu Bakr as the Emir in charge of the Hajj for that year. And again, the reason that the Prophet ﷺ didn't go is he didn't want to be there whilst people were doing it naked. It's just not fitting. And one of the books of Seerah I read, they put it very nicely, I thought, where they said that, that Abu Bakr was the deputy prince of Al-Hajj, and he would lead the Muslims to perform these rituals. And then they get ready and they leave the small delegation, and then almost as soon as Abu Bakr and the delegation, the pilgrims, have left, revelation comes down. Surah Taubah, or the first few verses of Surah Taubah come, and then the Prophet ﷺ, he gets Ali to catch up with Abu Bakr to explain the situation, and with a specific task. And so essentially what happens is that Abu Bakr, he's left Medina with the 300, going to perform Hajj. He's on his way, and then the beginning verses of Surah Taubah come, and we've talked about them before, but I'll quickly just quickly recite them here. The first verse, and we've talked before how Surah Taubah, also known as Surah Al-Bara, is the only surah in the Qur'an that doesn't start with Bismillah. And the reason, some say the reason is because it starts off with a dissociation. And so, the first verse is, dissociation or freedom from all previous obligations is declared from Allah and His Messenger to those of the mushrikun with whom you've made a treaty. So you can't start the surah, or it's not befitting for the surah to start by saying Allah is the most merciful, and then to say we've cancelled all treaties. So it starts off by by this cancellation of the treaties. And the second verse is, so travel freely for 4 months throughout the land, but know that you cannot escape the punishment of Allah, and Allah will disgrace the non-believers. And a declaration from Allah and His Messenger to mankind on the greatest day, the day of Hajj, is that Allah is free from all obligations to the mushrikun, and so is His Messenger. So if you repent, it's better for you, but if you turn away, know that you cannot escape, and give glad tidings, and give tidings of a painful torment to those who disbelieve, except those of the mushrikun with whom you have a treaty, and who have not subsequently failed in anything of that treaty, nor have supported anyone against you. So fulfill that treaty to them for the end of the term. Surely Allah loves the pious. Then when the sacred months have passed, kill the mushrikun wherever you find them, and capture them and besiege them, and lie in wait for them in each and every ambush. But if they repent and perform salah and give zakah freely, leave them on their way. Verily Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. And if any of the mushrikun seek your protection, then grant them protection, so that they may hear the word of Allah, and then escort them to where they can be secure. That is because they are men who do not know. So quite powerful verses revealed. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gets these verses, and he realizes that these need to be conveyed straight away. So obviously it's going to take time for Abu Bakr to reach Medina, the custom is the custom is that of the pre-Islamic custom, the Jahili custom, and sort of the political norm at the time was that if you have a treaty, and treaties are done between tribes and the elders of the tribes, if you have a treaty, if you're going to cancel the treaty, it should really be somebody who is senior in the family who does it, right? So the Prophet he doesn't want to give any excuse for either the Quraysh or the mushrikun for raising queries around the validity of this request. He sends someone from his own family, and he sends Ali, and he gives Ali his own camel to go and convey this message. Right. So the Prophet he receives the revelation, and the Sahabi ask, "Are we going to send these verses to Abu Bakr because he's the Emir of the Hajj party?" And the Prophet says, "No, no one shall convey these verses on my behalf other than someone from my own household." And again, as I said, the reason for that is that the announcement, if it comes from the family of the Prophet ﷺ, it carries that extra weight amongst the people who are sort of wavering, or who don't know, or who still cling on to some of the old practices, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he chooses Ali ibn Abi Talib to go to mention this to Abu Bakr, and then for Ali, when he's there to announce it to the people on the day of Hajj. So this is Ali is dispatched, and he goes with Abu Huraira and a few others to catch up with Abu Bakr. So he's coming with, and again, you can't break a treaty. If you've got a treaty with someone, you can't just break it in a surprise way, right? You can't, and I know there was, some. I sometimes play a game called HISC, which is a board game, and then people in that, they make treaties, and then they suddenly break those treaties, and they declare war on the people that they're supposed to be in treaty with. That's something in Islam you cannot do. You need to give notice that actually I'm giving you fair notice, here it's 4 months. I'm giving you fair notice that this treaty will become null and void. So prepare yourself. And essentially what the verses are saying, all treaties are going to become null and void. Prepare yourself. Either you accept Islam or you leave the Arabian Peninsula. If you don't, be prepared to fight. So that's essentially the message that Ali is going to the people with. It's not a surprise. We've broken the treaty. We're going to attack you now. This is actually giving them due notice. We've put you on notice. The treaty will be broken, and so you've got these 4 months to get your affairs in order. So the first verse is cutting off all the ties, cutting off all treaties, cancelling, negating, nullifying all treaties, and we're giving you notice. The second verse, travel freely throughout the land for 4 months. Allah says you've got these 4 months, and then when these 4 months come to an end, your safety can no longer be assured, right? And so it's giving these pagans enough time to get their affairs in order and decide what to do. It's not something sprung up with them. They've got, they can have their councils, they can have their discussions, and they can decide should they stay or should they go. And then the third verse, Allah is saying that this announcement will be after the day of Arafah, the day of sacrifice, and that from that day, all relationships with the pagans will be the announcement of all severing of relations with the pagans happens from that day forward, right? And then there's the exemption of those who've stayed true to the treaties, and then they've got as I say, they've been given notice. So essentially, these verses are basically saying that where Allah then says, that after the sacred months have passed, after the 4 months have passed, kill them wherever you find them, and ambush them unless they repent, establish prayer, give zakah, let them, then let them go on their way. So in context, these verses are saying basically that the pagans in the Arabian Peninsula, in the Haram, they need to know that Allah will not tolerate any paganism, any idol worship in the Haram, in the Arabian Peninsula henceforth, right? That this is now a completely sacred land. No idol worship is allowed. So you cannot worship any idols on the land of the Haram. So you've got 4 months, as I say, for these two options. They either get rid of all paganism, all vestiges of paganism, idolatry, right? Accept Islam, right? Or leave. If you don't like that, then leave the Arabian Peninsula. If you don't leave, be prepared to face war. And, the Muslims will be very strict in that, right? Because from henceforth, no idolatry will be allowed to be practiced on the Arabian Peninsula. So that's essentially the nub of what they're saying. So Ali catches up with Abu Bakr, and he says, I've got these. He's traveling on the Prophet's personal camel. So Abu Bakr, obviously, and all the Muslims, they recognize this is the camel of the Prophet. So this is some serious stuff that's going on. So he's asking, well, why are you here? And Ali explains, I've got these verses. So then Abu Bakr, because he's been sent as the Emir, he asks him quite pertinently, are you sent as a commander over me, or am I still the commander? Right? So Abu Bakr, he's been sent. Ali, again, very senior, he's coming with verses of the Qur'an and a new instruction. So Abu Bakr wants to know, well, do I step aside and let you take charge, or am I still in charge? So Ali says, no, you're still the commander, you're still the emir, but I have to recite these verses of Surah Taubah. And this is when I recite them, because I'm the family of the Prophet ﷺ, therefore it's more befitting if I do that, and then the people have no excuse for not following that. So that's what they did. And just to go over those 4 main proclamations that Abu Bakr, Ali, and Abu Hurairah made during the Hajj. No one shall enter Jannah except a Muslim, right? No one shall perform Tawaf naked, and that was enacted there and then. It's not something that they would say, well, this year you can do it naked. So no, from now, no one's allowed to do it naked, right? No mushrik shall ever perform Tawaf ever again after this year. Because obviously lots of people, or not lots, but a number of people are still coming from the outer regions of the Arabian Peninsula as pagan worshippers, doing their pagan rituals, even though the Kaaba has been cleansed of idols and it is, back to its proper state as being, the house of Allah. People still have paganism and they're still performing paganism. They're still coming to worship as they have been doing for many years. But the third proclamation is that no pagan worshippers or idol worshippers will ever be allowed to perform Tawaf again after this year. And then what we just mentioned, any contract that exists with the pagans, between the pagans and the Muslims, with any tribe shall expire after 4 months. And if there's no treaty, and if there is a time clause already in the treaty, then that should be honoured, unless there are reasons to cancel it, where they've sort of obviously gone against the terms of the treaty. And again, it's just to briefly mention the first of those, which is a really important point, especially nowadays, especially for us here living in the West, that no one will enter Jannah except that they are a Muslim, right? And again, it just for us it makes sense. What's the point in having the right religion if you're saying, well, all religions lead to paradise? Well, clearly they don't. There may have been some merits in some of the other religions prior to, but now this is it. Islam is the only way forward. You have to be a Muslim to get into Jannah. Obviously, we can talk about those who haven't heard about Islam. That's the Prophet does talk about that. And those who are around who practice different things, but the exclusive nature of the revelation is now that you have to believe in salvation from Islam. So you can't pick and choose and go for what you think is an easier religion or a lesser religion. It's going to give you a better time here, and you'll still get to paradise. The Prophet is making it clear: no, you need to be a Muslim, right? And then again, we talked about how the practice of doing Tawaf naked, that was abolished there and then, and you've got this practice that's been happening for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, from the time of Ismail, the generations well after Ismail, who thought this is the way they should do it, this is how they interpreted it, and this is the practice, and then within a short matter of time, all of that has been cancelled out. So the rituals were done according to the previous rituals. The sacrifices were being done. They were wearing the ihram. Obviously, the following year, the Prophet ﷺ does the Hajj, and that's the Hajjatul Wada, his only proper Hajj according to how it should be done, and which is why he encouraged as many people as possible to come and accompany him for that Hajj, right? Over 100,000 people went and performed the Hajj along with the Prophet ﷺ. And he says, this is how it has to be from now on. and he, through Allah's permission, got rid of all the other excesses that were being done and purified the rituals to what we do now in terms of the Hajj. And again, so we see that prior to the Hajj, the process of this Abu Bakr's Hajj process, he's saying, look, I really don't want to go and do Hajj when there are people doing a naked Tawaf. So Allah then, he sends Abu Bakr, Allah then sends the Qur'an and says basically, look, from next year onwards, no one will be allowed to do Tawaf, no one's allowed to do Tawaf naked, but from next year onwards, there will be no paganism allowed in the Arabian Peninsula. And again, it's preparing the way for Islam to be the preeminent and the dominant ideology and religion within the Arabian Peninsula. So that's the Hajj of Abu Bakr. Inshallah, from next week we will do a lot of the stories around the year of delegations, and there's quite a number of them. And like I mentioned right at the beginning, delegations were coming to Medina for a number of years, right? And it's just that now that there is peace, now that the Quraysh have been vanquished, Mecca comes under the Muslim control, the Hajj is now Muslim Hajj. A lot of the other tribes were playing a wait and see game. Well, let's see what happens between what they initially saw as a sort of like an internal power struggle amongst the Quraysh. Whoever's going to win this battle, we will ally with them. And then obviously the Quraysh and their paganism lost out in the process. He was triumphant, and so a lot of these tribes who were sitting on the fence, they basically said, right, we used to give our allegiance and religion and everything to the Quraysh. Now the realpolitik is that we need to become Muslim, or we need to be allied to the Prophet ﷺ. So that's essentially what is happening. Is we're seeing tribe upon tribe upon tribe coming. And when we talk about delegations, they're not huge delegations. The delegation from Najran was quite big, and one or two other delegations from the Yemen, they were quite big. But generally, when you talk about delegations, you're talking about a handful, maybe a dozen or even half a dozen of your senior elder people, wise people coming and either negotiating with the Prophet ﷺ, their status, or finding out what Islam is about. Is it right for them? And then they would go back to their people. So these people have been given executive authority by their tribes to explore what needs to be done. And so you'd get a lot of these delegations. Many of them would stay in the masjid. And again, as non-Muslims, they are staying in the masjid. And again, when we talk about the Christians of Najran, they were even allowed to perform their acts of worship in the Prophet's mosque. They would face the east wall, and they would do their chanting, whatever, but they're still doing their religious worship within the mosques. And you've got people coming to Medina who are non-Muslims, right? And who leave as non-Muslims. And so we'll talk more about those inshallah next week. So until then, do bear with us. Do remember us in your du'as. Do remember the ummah in your du'as. And inshallah, again, like I said last week, it's not long before Ramadan starts, so let's see how best we can prepare for that. So until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.